Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Jay Nygaard, the Turbine Guy. That was, oh man, that was better than I expected. That was really, there aren't enough stories like that. Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Nygaard is a friend of mine who has had some similar experiences asserting his rights, living off grid to harvest, of all things, the wind.
The evil wind.
I've heard government claim to own the rain, as in you can't collect rainwater on your property, but you can't harvest wind. Jay, welcome to Adam versus the Man. Where the hell do you live where government is so out of control?
Yeah, I live in Orono, Minnesota, which a few years ago was noted as the 10th richest community in the United States.
Hey, Jay, you're not like wearing a mask, are you? Trying to like hide your
No, I don't do that mask thing if I don't have to.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for adjusting your shot there. All right, so give us please the background. How did you end up there, and why? And what before we get into the meat of your civil disobedience story, with your family, your living situation, please give us the appropriate backdrop.
Okay, well, I want to start prefacing by my wife and I have had 5 criminal prosecutions related to property issues in our city without a conviction. Without a single conviction. And in Hennepin County, Minnesota, where there's a 94% conviction rate, we're 4 times more likely to win the Powerball than we are to get off 5 times.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyways, years ago, I got into the green energy field and I figured, hey, I'm going to start doing solar and wind and look for all kinds of different products. And I ran into this wind turbine from Taiwan that just looked to be super cool and modern. And I sent off my $5,000 to Taiwan to become a dealer. And part of my goal was, I've got to be able to prove to you that it works, right? Well, I waited 2 months sitting there hoping, that this Taiwanese company actually existed. Maybe they're up at the opium den laughing at the silly American that sent them all this money. You never know. But after 2 months, a turbine showed up. And that's when my relationship began. Now, right now, I am the U.S. technical advisor for Hivat Technology Corporation of Taiwan. So I've got a long-standing relationship with them. I've got them through UL certifications and Small Wind Certification Council certifications, and donated my time and effort all these years to get this accomplished because I believe so much in their product. So, anyways, like I said, I got to put one up so I can show you, yes, it works, because there's so many bad actors in this field. So that's what I did. And being on the planning commission and city council in my community previously, I understood that there were no ordinances to control it and that I could really put it wherever I wanted as long as I didn't violate the height ordinance. Well, unfortunately...
Just out of curiosity there, Jay, because this like I'm thinking as a homesteader, and I know a lot of people in my audience are going, well, what's the height ordinance?
30 feet.
Okay, so you're allowed on your property to put up anything to 30 feet up to the edge of your property?
Well, not according to the city. According to the city, you're not allowed to put up anything unless they say it's okay. But that's not how the code, but that's not how the code's written, and that's not how it's applied. So I knew that. So I put it on a 10-foot pole, and it was 19 feet tall right by the side of my house. And I put it in the most unobtrusive spot I had on the property. Well, my neighbor...
Can we get this picture up? I'm sorry, we had the link, but it's like the side of your peaked roof home, on the side facing the lake, it sticks up just a couple feet above the roof, right?
Well, that's a small one that I still have on. See, when I put the bigger one up, the 1500 watt, every time the city pissed me off during the lawsuit, I put another small one up. So I ended up with 3 more. Okay, and through all the litigation, I've still got one that they can't go after anymore. No matter how crooked the courts are now, I still get to keep this one.
All right. So how did the fight with the big one start?
Well, it was a neighbor. It was a neighbor complaining, and the neighbors getting together and putting forth a bunch of hysteria and misinformation and disinformation and recruiting everybody they could in order, especially city officials, to go after us. And I've actually got the former mayor who started the lawsuits and a city council lady who was in on it, who have now come to the light side, and they're willing to testify that the neighbors in the city were out recruiting people and doing everything they could to get us. So it was because of that effort that we ended up in court, and we lost at the district court. And this is an older lady, and she didn't really seem to know what she was doing very well, but we lost because the city said that it's a quote unquote structure located in a setback zone. Well, that's not how the code works for all uses. And we ended up winning at the appeals court because they recognized that when they acknowledged that they didn't see the turbine as any different than basketball hoops, clotheslines, and flagpoles that populated the city uncontrolled. And they sent it back to the city for reconsideration. Well, their idea of reconsideration was having me resubmit my building permit, to which I sent them a letter that said, screw off, basically. I said, it doesn't need one, neither do basketball hoops, flagpoles, or clotheslines. That's a category the appeals court said, so I'm not sending you anything. Well, they took that as non-compliance. And they went back to the same judge and for the same reasons reopened the lawsuit. And I remember sitting there right before she ruled against us and said, well, you know what? I don't know very much about cities and ordinances. I don't do this very much. And then she ruled against us. So she admitted her incompetence right before ruling against us again. So we appealed again, and my lawyer had it dismissed for a technicality that he served the paperwork electronically instead of personally. That's why now everything has to be served electronically. It was at the time they were switching that over, and that the appeals court decided, you know what? Nygaard's probably going to win again. Let's just get him on a technicality and make him lose. And so we lost, and we didn't know what to do. And I left it up and I left it up and I left it up. And finally the city went after us for contempt of court, and we got a new lawyer. And this guy found a 1995 Minnesota statute that gives everybody in Minnesota the right to harvest the wind. Now, we were in front of another judge with this too, and we went back to both judges saying, hey, we've always had this right to do.
So that was 1956?
1995.
I'm sorry, 1995. The law for that says you can harvest the wind in
Minnesota statute 216F.02 is what specifically gives us all that right.
What year was that passed?
95. So this is
they were
15 years
individual turbine use like solar. They wanted to encourage it.
Absolutely. And especially Minnesota's a farming state, and you got little windmills all over the place for the farms.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it just makes sense. So anyways, we went back to this judge and another judge that we were in a lawsuit with the neighbors over. And that second judge, she actually, when she was getting ready to rule, she looked at me and said, you know what, Mr. Nygaard, you should have told me the law sooner. I'm like, really? Try saying that to your doctor or your car mechanic. Right? That ain't going to fly at all. So we lost against her too. But anyways, so eventually I took the turbine and pulled down because we just kept getting ruled against. I mean, we were supposed to go to jail at one time, and the appeals court stepped in and stopped it until they heard it. And then they said, well, this isn't to change a law, so it's no big deal. You know, it's really sad because what I've come to find out is that the courts believe that a judge's ruling is more important than the Constitution. I found that out more than once, you know, and it's just sad to me that the judges don't consider things such as rights or previous rights when they go into rulings. What the communities do now is they dissect everything down to little parts that they can go after, and then the judges will grab onto that. It's sad how it works. So anyways, eventually, you know, my wife had enough of this, and so I took the turbine and pulled down, and then they kept after me for the footing. So finally one day a buddy came over and we had
footing is what I saw in the photo. It's like a little concrete pad, right? I mean, it's like a square of sidewalk.
Well, it was bigger than that. It was actually 4 by 4 by 4. So it was a good size footing. And my buddy and I, with a jackhammer, chopped the top half off. And I noticed that the concrete foundation of our house right there was cracking up a little bit, 1920, and I didn't want to wreck it anymore. So I just sliced the anchor bolts and buried it. Useless chunk of concrete, right? No. They took me to court. They said that I didn't get it all out of there, and I'm this bad guy. And I went in there with signed and sealed and stamped engineering documents that said, leave it there, or you're going to wreck the foundation of his house. And the judge held them up and go, you know, Mr. Nygaard, I call these excuses. halfway through that hearing, I turned around and gave my kid my phone and everything but my wallet. He's like, what do you do? I said, I'm not going to be needing these. It was obvious what was going to happen when I came to court, you know? So I ended up going to jail that day. And my wife and I were both sentenced to, 6 months each. And, you know, being contempt, we could clear it at any time. She was given a month to get a contractor and plan together to get it out. And I was supposed to sit in jail this whole time over a useless buried chunk of concrete, which, by the way, in Minnesota is considered clean fill. So I went to jail Friday night. Saturday, we actually had a show at our house. And that's why I think they did it the way they did. We had a renewable energy show that that's called the Solar Tour. And we have people coming through looking at the turbines, the solar power, my battery bank, and all that so I could educate people. Well, they put me in jail the day before, so I couldn't be there for that. How's that for nice? So they couldn't do nothing that day. But on that Sunday, my son got together with a bunch of buddies, and they cleared it out and started digging it out. And then we got a bobcat over, and the guy jackhammered the shit out of it. And they ended up getting it out at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, to which point I turned around to all my cellmates and said, hey, the concrete's out. And there was a huge cheer. Because at that point, you know, I figured I'm going in jail. You know, I've been in the Navy. I can sit around and hang out and play spades all day long. That ain't no big deal for me. I'll just have the right attitude, right? In which I did. So I made friends with everybody, and I explained to everybody what was going on. I told, actually, I would go ask them first, so they would want to ask me. And I tell you, I had 12 black guys from the hood in my cell, and they didn't get it. One of them told me, he said, man, you got white boy problems.
Yeah, no, relatively speaking, it's a weird kind of trap that you seem to have fallen into with your, what's the body? It's the city planning board.
Well, you see that was the beginning. The city council was going after me for that, specifically because the neighbors were pushing him. One of my neighbors actually got elected to the city council, and now he's mayor. Now get this, the guy, while he was on the city council, my company is Go Green Energy LLC. He formed a company, Go Green Energy LLC Corporation, mirrored mine while he was on the city council, and then he used city funds to sue my company. And you point that out to a judge, and they look at you with a blank stare. I mean, how's that for a man? Talking about abuse of power, abuse of position, and all this.
So do you think? Are you interested in naming this individual or pursuing him directly?
Absolutely. His name is Dennis Walsh. He's the mayor of Orono, Minnesota. We affectionately call him the Weasel because that's pretty much what the guy is. Actually, I'll try to find a picture while we're talking and send it.
So with just to sort of now that we see what's behind the story with the Weasel, I kind of want to go back and say and ask, like, what was behind every step of the actions taken against you. So you said first that there were neighbors complaining, but that there was an effort to get them to complain, right?
No, they're the ones who started it. I have a neighbor. They sued us recently, and they sued the city to sue us. And you can't do that because then rich people win. If you've got the money to sue a city to go after someone, rich people are going to win. And that's something I understood on the council you can't do. And the city, instead of just moving to dismiss on that grounds, went after us for 18 months, then moved to dismiss on that grounds. So anyways, we were in a lawsuit with them, and we counterclaimed them all this, but the result of the lawsuit was we bought their house. So they're gone. So that's how we got rid of the worst of the problems and the worst of the complainers. But this guy testified at one point that he spent 15 to 20 hours a week following my Facebook, reading my posts, my blogs, printing stuff off, contacting government officials, and doing everything he could to try to figure out how to deal with me. And his wife said under oath that, no, that's probably low. It's more like 20 to 40 hours a week.
Wow. Okay, so you had one genuinely obsessed, weird, pissed off neighbor, and then you had the Weasel come in and go, well, let's organize this and go after him, and so it's like there was a Karen, right, or a Chad in this case, right, who's trying to control you as that, and maybe he's got you're spending that much time. I mean, even if separate from it's all justified or you're getting some sick pleasure out of it, that is a disturbing amount of time. Even the lower numbers there, 15 to 20 hours a week.
Oh yeah.
Going after your neighbor for a wind turbine. Like you're also, revealing how ineffective your efforts are if you're spending that much time to do that. So then the weasel came in and sort of typical politics. I mean, it's interesting to see it sort of on almost a 1-to-1 in a community basis, where you have a Karen who's upset with you, and a politician who steps in to take advantage of it by making the Karen's position look like it's bigger than it is within the community, and then using the apparatus of the state to victimize you.
Exactly what happened. And the whole problem with all of this are the judges. The judges refuse to honor and follow the law. The judges get behind the communities and support the communities as if they're a part of the community. And they don't understand they're not. They're there as independent arbiters.
Well, it's important to point out that the weasel, and I think the weasel, the Karen, the victim, the community paints like a very good, easy to understand these dynamics kind of picture. Well, you have the victim, the Karen, the weasel, the community, and then you have the rest of the government. And a lot of times the weasel in government is able to manipulate the rest of the government, partly through public opinion, partly through, in this case, being the mayor. I mean, or having the cops do what they want because they have an outsized influence in the courts. Like you said, I mean, if two people come before a judge, and this is like the inherent bias of the system that most people try to pretend doesn't exist, is that when a judge hears testimony from a cop, who he hears testimony from every week with every case that comes before him on this, and he goes, well, this guy keeps bringing me cases. This is just some scumbag the cops don't like for whatever reason. I don't care why they don't like him. I'm going to side with the cops. And even if it's not as like conscientiously malicious as that, there's an inherent bias of, I think I trust, as a judge, I think I trust the cops more. And as we know, cops and weasels take advantage of that.
The cops lie.
Yeah, cops lie on stand all the time.
Not only that, they lie in probable cause reports, and then they're too chicken shit to show up behind their probable cause report. This is the stuff that happened to me. During one disorderly conduct prosecution that the weasel claimed I spit in his face when I didn't. Okay, I had a witness there and everything. They went through all of this to prosecute me. Thank God for juries, not guilty in 15 minutes, even though the judge was trying to screw me the whole time too. So the jury saved me, but they withheld a police report from later that day that would have exonerated me. And I didn't find it till after they tried to deny my carry permit, and I did a data request with the sheriff. And that's when I found that police report that they withheld. How's that for crazy? Now get this. This is just the beginning. My wife and I were just criminally prosecuted for failure to obtain a permit to replace a driveway.
You're on the list now.
That's
And I got to point this out, Jay. Like once, even if it's really just the weasel behind this, at this point he's got a few people involved in this conspiracy with him, right? I assume there's some other at this point who at least are aware and going along with it. I mean, I don't know how petty it is, right? In a small town like that, is it? What does it take? Can the mayor just go and say, hey, why don't you go look into this for me, and see if you can issue something here, and why don't you look into that? And maybe that's all it takes. But it sounds like
that's part of it.
You can run away peacefully, you move and forget about this and move somewhere where you're not a target and less likely to be one, or you're gonna have to fight and win, because the third option is to sit there, and as long as this general circumstance exists with a corrupt mayor and city government that's at least manipulatable, you're going to be victimized. You're going to be harassed.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why we're fighting our fight. because you can be victimized and harassed. Now, we've got a federal retaliation lawsuit we're just about ready to file. We're just putting the finishing touches on, and we're going to hold these people accountable for all of these years and all of the stuff they've done. And the coup de grace on it is this driveway prosecution that my wife was found, or she was dismissed for lack of probable cause because she had nothing to do with it, and I was found not guilty at the end. Now, get this. We were criminally charged because a code enforcement officer, city staffer, decided that I was being argumentative with him because he couldn't point out in the code that he was trying to force me to put a lip on my driveway to keep city stormwater out. I refused. And because I'd make a noise up there that I'm getting ready to go after the city for dumping stormwater into our new property. And so this was their answer, was to go after, force me to do this lip and use this permitting process to illegally coerce me into stuff, and I'm not falling for it. So I was, my wife were both criminally charged without any evidence and just on the say of a city staffer. The police sergeant just signed off on it and sent it. No investigation. Now, what's wrong with our country that we're at the point where a non-law enforcement officer can initiate criminal charges?
Well, Jay, I want to say a couple of things, because I do want, it wouldn't be an Adam versus the Man interview with a couple of harder questions to finish it off at least.
Sure.
But I want to make sure that we conclude this legal challenge that you're dealing with, in the sense that I want you to know that you have my support in this, and I hope that you keep us posted on how this develops. I think a lot of people who care about freedom see this as an important fight. And I'm not, I don't want to be super attached or optimistic about the outcome, because you're appealing to a bigger government authority to deal with a corrupt, smaller government authority. You're going to have to challenge the credibility of that larger government authority with the public. They're going to have to know that, hey, if this bigger government authority protects the weasel, then the whole thing is screwed and can't be trusted, and these people shouldn't be reelected, and people responsible should be held accountable, because it's like corruption in internal affairs, right, in a police department. Yeah. So is there anything that we can do to help, aside from continuing to cover this story, and what's a good place for our audience to follow you on social media or anywhere else that we can amplify your message when you need the help with this?
Sure. Well, I've got my own YouTube channel, the Turbine Guy, and I'm almost up to 2,000 views or 2,000 subs at this point. So that's going really well for me. It just got monetized a year or so ago, and it's real exciting that way. And, my channel is more about renewable energy, but I also do government corruption and animals and a few other things. So there's a whole wide variety of things. I got my website, gogreenenergyonline.com. Anybody can go there anytime and find my email and click over. So those two would be the two. One last thing I do want to talk about, if we got a quick minute, is I've been censored myself. Anonymous did my story after Mass Report did my story, and it blew up on Anonymous to over 11.5 million views before it was taken down. And I'm quite frustrated because it was taken down off the word of Snopes, of all places. And when Snopes did a supposed fact check on me, they lied, of course, and I tried contacting them to correct it, and they wouldn't even get back to me. So, I'm not sure how, but if people can find out how to, get my censorship out of there, so my stories can come back and people can see them, because, I just like you've been around the world a lot more than me with news. I've been in Russian and Greek and newspapers. The UK Daily Mail's had a story on me. So I've been around, and you can still find these, but I just don't understand how a dopey little website like Snopes, that's obviously lefty liberal bias, can do this. And that's what gets me too. This all happened under Democrat president, Democrat governor, Democrat legislature in Minnesota. Not one Democrat comes out to support me. I'm doing what they want. Green energy. I'm bringing a new technology that's going to be a piece to the puzzle. Where are these doggone Democrats?
Well, they only want it if they can control it and profit from it, right? All right. So, Jay, first tough question here. You live in a city with zoning and ordinances and city stormwater running right in front of your driveway, and you have stepped into a system by choosing to live there where, if I was playing devil's advocate, I might say, how can you complain? You chose to live there. You chose to live in this system, to be on grid in so many ways.
Okay, I can answer that.
Yeah. Well,
First off,
how can you complain? And more importantly, Jay, why wouldn't you live somewhere just a little more rurally, or sort of maybe even just outside of incorporated city limits, where you could sidestep some of these challenges?
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't live in a gated community, and I don't live in an association, and I chose not to live in those areas for certain reasons. And, I grew up in this town. I went to high school in this town. This is my hometown. I actually grew up real poor in this rich community. And it was always my dream to be able to move on to the lake where I am with the beautiful beach and have my old Chris Craft down there to drive around in. And that's what I have now. Now, I got people who moved in after me, and the town is growing up and changing. Orono used to be kind of like full of rich people, but poor people too. And it was a real eclectic mix that all kind of got along with each other. But now there's a lot of new money moving in, and these people think that they live in gated communities, and then they get to tell you how to live. So this is all kind of moved in around me. And I'm just trying to live life as it was when I grew up here and under the ordinances and state statutes that apply to me. So that's the whole thing. I have not once violated a state statute or city ordinance in what I'm doing. And so I don't understand why the persecution.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's, I can sympathize. That makes a lot of sense. And it's one thing to say, hey, if you're like me and I don't have any particular commitment to any location, to say pick anywhere you want in the country. But even that is a kind of submission to the territorial takeover of government in the United States, aside from the sort of land enclosure concept, but the extension of direct authority in violation of private property in such a way that when they do that, when you choose to live in an area like that, or a city extends its authority, they are basically doing so at the expense of your private property. And it is one of the great tragedies of American government.
Well, and unfortunately, communities like mine fail to follow the laws and the things that are set up there for us. When they're going after us and we've got a 1995 law on our side and the city attorney never brings it up, okay, then you got a big time issue going on there. And that's what ended up happening with us. They're playing games with ordinance and the statutes to try to take rights away. And that's what we're fighting for, and especially in this community I'm in. It's super important for me to win here so people in North Minneapolis or other more disadvantaged communities can enjoy their rights without having to go through the same type of fight that I am.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's huge implications to this. All right, we're going to end with something I hope a little more fun for you. Solar versus wind, right? And I'm going to ask you this sort of like two-part question here, because I live off grid. I got 5 250 kilowatt panels on my shipping container. I got some $200 charge controller off Amazon, an 8,000 watt inverter, and I forget I should know better about my battery bank, right? And I live in a pretty windy area, but it's also pretty sunny. And the way it was explained to me was, hey, man, you could get a turbine, but why have extra parts and things that can go wrong? We just buy a couple extra battery banks to get you through those cloudy days. Are wind turbines that easy, plug and play, bolt onto a building, plug it into your charge controller, reliable, that you can just do that now and you might as well have the supplemental power at night? Or should someone like me just buy more batteries? And then generally, solar versus wind.
Well, it's apples and oranges when you're talking solar and wind. To find a quality wind turbine that's going to last you as long as solar is very difficult. And that's a turbine I represent, the high-watt wind turbines. And the high-watt turbines are plug and play. Like I said, they're certified, so you know that they're going to end up working. They're definitely a little more expensive, and that's a big knock on it between wind and solar. When I first got in this business, a 3 kilowatt wind turbine installed cost about the same as 3 kilowatts of solar installed. Well, the price of solar's kept dropping and the wind turbines have stayed the same. Okay, so now it's got to be, because price-wise, now it's to the point where you have to choose, do I really need this turbine or not? Why not get more solar? Well, to me, it's important to have both because you want to have redundancies. You know, if something goes wrong with one system, then you're SOL. And you don't want to be SOL. You still want to be able to maintain what you need to, if only on an emergency basis, till you get that other stuff fixed. So the backup redundancy is the issue, as well as the fact that we now have a turbine that will succeed for 20 years. I've been installing these since 2010, and I've not had a mechanical failure yet. In fact, I've never had to do any mechanical maintenance on any of them.
That's amazing. No, that is great to hear that wind turbine technology is already at that point of practical application. And it's understandable that solar was a lot sexier for a while and got more government money and attention, right? And maybe wind's got to catch up. So what would a homesteader or someone like me just powering a little cabin, what would you expect to pay for a turbine like you're describing on a system like that?
Well, if you're running a 12 or 24 volt battery bank, then the 300 watt units for you, those are $2,850 shipped to your house. Then you basically have to get a hole designed. You dig a hole, fill it with cement, stick the pole in, make sure it's level, and run your wires, and you're done. So it's pretty simple. If you're running 48 volt battery bank, the smallest one would be the 700 watt unit, and those retail for $5,300 plus shipping. So
it's very reasonable from what we're talking. No, it's exciting that it's at that level of competitiveness that solar and wind is. They're both at that level of practicality. Jay, thank you for what you're doing, both as an entrepreneur and as an activist, because I think that kind of conscientious entrepreneurship, advancing technology, is critical to advancing humanity and freedom, but also recognizing when government is in the way of that progress, having the courage to stand up to it. So tell us your website again so we can get that up on screen.
GoGreenEnergyOnline.com. GoGreenEnergyOnline.com. And my YouTube channel is Turbine Guy. I'm in this for the long haul for the people. So the whole goal of what I'm doing is to empower people themselves to do what they want to do. And I'm sure that that's what you're all about too. I don't need big government to take care of me. I need me to take care of me. And I want other people to be able to do the same thing.
Jay, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And best of luck in every way. I encourage everyone in our audience to keep up with you and support you in this. From a
squid to a jarhead. See you.
Bruh. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jay Nygaard, the Turbine Guy. That was better than I expected. That was really, there aren't enough stories like that in the time of COVID. And I hate to sort of blame it on COVID, but just the general suppression of human activity and people concerned with things other than improving the system